If you, as the owner, are the most important person in the business, how transferable is that business going to be? How valuable is that business going to be if you're not there? Discover that we need to double the value, enterprise value of your business, and we have 10 years to do it. Set some goals around those things and make it happen.
All right, Laurie Barkman, welcome to the Business Exit Success Podcast. And I just want to start right away. I did read your book, The Business Transition Handbook. So I am looking forward to our conversation today because you're going to have some great insight and knowledge for our listeners. So excited to kick this off.
Thanks so much for having me. And thank you for reading my book. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So let's just start with, just tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing with business owners.
I've spent a career working with companies from small to big and found a passion of working with entrepreneurs to help them on that growth journey. In this phase of my career and the phase of where I'm working with entrepreneurs is in this next act. We have an opportunity as a business owner to build a business that someone else may want to own one day. And that is where I'm spending my time. So how do we as owners think about that? For some, it's very daunting. They've never done it before. It's very intimidating. They want to have someone helping them on that journey. So as the business transition Sherpa, that's what I'm doing. I'm working with them on this next phase of their entrepreneurial journey, from building value to letting go, from transition to transaction.
Love it.
I'm a certified M&A advisor, and I work with companies on that path to get the business ready for an ultimate transition of ownership, succession of leadership, and then it could be a sale to a third party, it could be sale to family, could be an ESOP, it doesn't matter what the mechanism is, but what is that ultimate letting go for them professionally, personally, and financially?
Yes. And you mentioned that challenge of letting go. It can certainly be a challenge. And I think I want to start there, I guess, with this topic of life after business. And you mentioned in your book, most owners feel they get pushed out of their business when they leave. The happiest and most fulfilling exits occur when they are pulled into the next chapter of their life rather than pushed. And this is really important because I feel talking about that next chapter is often neglected because it's the most difficult, I think, to talk about. Can you just touch on the push and pull factors that an owner will have to go through and maybe should start thinking about much sooner in advance?
Yeah, let's just think about your home, something that everybody could probably relate to. If you own your home and you're looking to move one day, and you've lived in this house for 40 years, you've raised your children, how easy is it going to be to pack up your stuff and move out? Well, it depends, right? Are you going to move to a super exciting place that you're just so thrilled about, and there's something about the house, there's something about the area, there's something about your family? That's a pull factor. You're being pulled to this next exciting thing. So as a business owner, what's an equivalent feeling of that? Maybe it's because you are going to start another company. Maybe it's because you are going to serve on boards, or you're going to be in the grandparent business. It's something that really gets you excited. You've started to work on that identity transition, the relationships, how you spend your time. Those are all factors that can pull you towards something exciting. And when you feel that energy and you feel that you want and you're ready to start to spend more of your time there, what's going to happen? Your body will follow, right? If your heart and mind is there, your body will follow. On the opposite side of that, if you dig your heels in on something, you just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? You're not going to do it.
No, you won't
your
follow
heart's
through.
Not there, your mind's not there, it's going to fall through.
Yeah.
And those are the push factors that can have that impact. Push factors can be also very negative things that you don't control. They can be a death of your partner, your demise. Unfortunately, we don't want that to happen, but we don't control it.
Yep.
It could be a divorce. It could be a disaster like COVID, right? Affected all of us, but we had no control over it. We call them the Ds, right? The 5 Ds. Nobody likes to talk about the Ds. They're bad. We hate them, but we have to plan for them. These are the contingencies. The things that we also might not control somewhat is how we feel about the business. Are we really not wanting to go in every day? We're just sick of it. We're bored.
Mhm.
And maybe that's sort of pushing us kind of in the middle. It's not really a pull factor. It's not really a push. It's sort of this danger zone of, wow, if you are just coasting along with your business and taking your foot off the gas, eventually you might find yourself on that negative side of the spectrum, which is, I really don't want to be here. This business is going the wrong direction. What's going to happen to your transferability, sellability of the business if we
Yeah.
start to have more of those negative factors in your life, negative factors in the business? It accumulates. So that's the distinction I try to give, is things that we control, things that we don't control, and are they more positive factors, more of these pull factors that we want to participate in, or the more things we're trying to avoid
Mm.
and almost like sweep them under the rug, and therefore don't participate in, and affects our mindset, and then those ultimately can harm the value of our business.
Yeah, and it's this dance, right? Because it's obviously a very emotional event of thinking about leaving and going into that next chapter of their life. But many don't understand too, like the reason why you're exiting, what you're going towards or away from, can affect the value. Like no one's going to want to buy a business when you're like, I'm exhausted. This is stressing me out. I got to get out. No one's going to want to buy that. So having that thought out well in advance sounds like it not only adds value, but makes sure for yourself that you're going to have fulfillment in that next chapter of your life. Is that pretty accurate?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So continuing with that concept of planning with the end in mind, I kind of want to talk about the planning for the end, but also the risk. You know, everyone you mentioned are going to leave their business, whether it's on their terms or not. Hopefully it's not forced. But the longer someone waits to plan, the less time they have to address the weaknesses in their business, which can drag down the value. So what are some of what are the top 3 risks that you see or have seen that maybe owners are not addressing, or maybe they just haven't even thought about it when they come to sell their business? Does anything come to mind?
Absolutely. The first and foremost is going to be just this understanding that you can't plan your exit when you're exiting. So let's just all acknowledge
Yeah.
that for a second,
Too
right?
late. Yeah.
And that does happen quite a bit. I want to leave, but oh, I haven't done this work to prepare. Um, the number one thing, Tom, I see is financials.
Yeah.
The financials are a mess. The financials are inconsistent year over year. They're not accurate. There's just issues and issues. If we are trying to sell, the first thing that a buyer is going to want to see are your financials. So again, just back to the house analogy, if you're trying to sell your house and they walk in and it's trash in your kitchen on the floor, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
right? They're just going to turn around and
See
walk
ya.
out. See
Yeah.
ya.
See you later.
They may not be willing to wait around and for you to sort of get accurate financials to share them. Time kills deals, as we say. So I
Mhm.
think that number one is the financials. The second thing are your people. If you as the owner are the most important person in the business, how transferable is that business going to be? How valuable is that business going to be if you're not there?
Mhm.
The new owner, look at your business from the outside in. Look at it as if you're the buyer. That's so eye-opening. And I
Yeah.
know you're a value builder advisor, as am I. And that's what I love about that system, is it really helps us take a look at the business with this lens of what are these value drivers and what might buyers be looking for. So again, number one, financials. Number two is really related to you as the owner, what role you have. And if you can separate from the business, and the business will stay healthy. Also, your processes. Are your processes well documented? Are they documented and shareable so that people can learn and do what your business needs to be done, and not
Yes.
just you?
Absolutely. Yeah. It resonates very well with me because that's the majority of the conversations is
Yeah.
having the people, the financials, because the financials tell a story, right? And the one thing that I think when buyers come in, yes, they want to know what you've done in the past, but then a big part that they often miss is projections. Like, what are you going to do after I buy your business for the next 3 or 4 years? What's that story look like? Because they want that story to look pretty darn good if they're going to invest or buy your business. Can you talk about maybe the projections and just that perspective of, yes, you need a strong history. Yes, you've been in business for 25 years, but a buyer is going to want to see what the future looks like as well. Can you talk about that?
They do, but there's a little bit of a rub, and we should definitely talk about this. Most business owners that I've encountered who are in the lower middle market don't do projections
Very much so.
well or at all. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't in it. They'll give all the reasons why they don't. Projections because I know the buyers are going to want to see. But the most common thing that I hear from the sellers is that, oh, I don't know, right? And what do I know? And I said, okay, I understand that, but let's put together projections 1 to 2 years, not more than that, because you're right. Beyond that, what do we really know?
Yeah.
So 1 to 2 years out, maybe your business enables you to have things that we can build from to predict year over year growth or flat or decline. So we want to use your history. We want to base it in some conservative assumptions and not go wild. I've seen assumptions go wrong where, and I was not working with my client at the time, but she was working with a financial planner who, well, I'll call him an accountant, excuse me. She was working with an accountant who did some 3 to 4 year projections. And the growth rates, I think that he had were maybe 15, 20%, very noticeable growth rates when her historical year-over-year growth rates were more like 8%, 10%, at its peak, maybe 15. And it was just dramatic. It was too dramatic. So we can't, the buyers were poking all kinds of holes in the plan, as they should, because it wasn't believable. I was working with her to put 1 to 2 year projection, how we think we're going to get there. And if anything, it's probably too conservative, but that's another conversation. So for the buyers, I think they want to see that there is a plan, but that they can capitalize beyond it, because that's their goodness, right? If they're going to acquire this business, that's their ROI to take the baseline and then do better than that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that all ties into, and I kind of want to shift into a couple terms that I see and hear kind of get intertwined and mixed up quite often. There's the exit planning side and then the succession planning side, which are two very different types of planning, but very important in each in their own right. But they kind of get, again, mixed up together. Can you just talk about the differences between those and the importance of addressing both of those areas when it comes to planning an exit?
Yeah, let's start with succession. So the first question is succession of what?
Yes.
And the two categories that I usually talk about are succession of ownership and succession of leadership. You can have a succession of leadership and still maintain ownership and control of your company. You can have a succession of ownership where you maintain control also, but where you're thinking about your ownership continue as a continuum of time. So for example, I have a client who is the founder and he has a partner. So my client is 64% owner right now. He's got a daughter in the business and he wants her to have an ownership stake over time. And so he's planning for her to get 20% stake over time.
Yep.
And that enables him to maintain control. But if and when he's ready to completely roll out of CEO and completely roll off the board, with his estate plan that we're putting together, then it'll also enable a succession of ownership with his family that he's going to be very purposeful about. So we're working on that with him. The other side of that is the transition of leadership. And we've put together this overall plan of, okay, 10 years, what's going to happen with these key executives, including his daughter. And it lines up nicely. When we talk about an exit is just literally, I'm going through that door, right? I'm opening that door and I'm stepping through it and then I'm closing it. Boom. It's like a moment in time, which is why I choose to use the word transition, because it's a transition over a period of time.
Yeah.
And yes, at some point you might have an exit where you're literally closing that door, opening and closing a door. And what are those flavors of an exit? Well, an exit can be a sale to a third party. It could be a sale to management. It could be a sale to an ESOP. It could be a sale to another type of buyer, which would be a financial buyer, or it could be a strategic buyer. But there's a buyer. There's always going to be a buyer because we're human and we are going to leave this earth. Let's just put that out there, right?
Yes.
So there's going to be a succession of ownership. How and when and to whom are all the variables. And that's part of this wonderful practice that you and I have of trying to help business owners figure out some of those variables and what's the right option for them.
Yes.
And exit can also mean a shifting of roles. So if you're the day-to-day CEO, you're the owner operator, is there a shifting where you are more of a an owner of the business, right? You're not in the day to day. You're a little more arm's length, and maybe you're taking on some real estate properties, and maybe you're, again, serving on boards, or the other things we talked about earlier in this conversation, Tom.
Yeah.
Where you've got more of a portfolio of things and how you spend your time.
Absolutely.
And that exit is the exit of you and your role today, and how you are going to spend your time tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. So I just want to recap some of that with again, succession planning. So that is, and you broke it up in a couple of areas, a way to look at it, which I love. But the one key takeaway I want listeners to get is there's not one way to do this. Like, it's not, I have to leave and shut my door and I'm done. There are options, but you only have the ability to take advantage of those options when you plan more in advance. As you mentioned, especially in a family business, transitioning it over time. And some assume, and maybe you've run into this too, Laurie, if a family-owned business owner, they're saying, hey, my kids will take it over. Well, did you talk to your kids yet? Some of them haven't, and maybe they don't want to take it over. So then what do you do? And usually there isn't, and I'm sure you run into this as well, a leadership team in place that is reliable, that also wants to take it over, and that can even afford to take over the business. Right? There's a lot of those variables. So what are some of the, especially for a family business, for succession, do you see maybe top 3 mistakes, or you could even consider, hey, 3 things to consider if you're a family business and looking at succession? What sticks out with that? And maybe you mentioned a couple already, but I feel that's worth repeating if that is the case. Anything come to mind there?
Absolutely. I think when it comes to, let's say, leadership succession, having the conversation to understand if they're interested is pretty important. And the timing of that is important too. You can have that conversation when they're in high school, but that's really just, a very high level conversation, because they're not even through college yet, or they're not, starting the workforce yet. What do they really know? But I'm close to a 2nd generation family business in construction, and they're in this situation right now where they have one of their family members would be the 3rd generation who is interested, and he's pursuing a engineering degree in college and wants to enter the family business one day.
Yeah.
And they've had that conversation. He's pursuing his degree because he's got this interest in mind. That's a great example, right? Where they were proactive on that, and none of the other nieces, there's nieces and maybe another nephew, but they're not interested. They've expressed, nope, we're not interested. So they had that conversation with him when he was in high school.
I love how he's still pursuing an education, though. Sorry to cut you off. They're making him get your education still, and then come back and see if we're still fit. I love that.
Absolutely. And then there's the management team who is so loyal, but maybe there's an issue with that. So for example, one of my clients has a very, very loyal management team, but they are apprehensive about being owners. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, right?
Yep.
So it's not only the financials, I need to be able to afford to buy this business, but then it's, oh my gosh, I will have the responsibility. Whereas today I get a paycheck, right?
Yep.
It's very different to be an owner. That liability as well as the equity, is it's both sides of that coin. And so when you're thinking about succession of leadership and succession of ownership, there's a lot of watch outs, right? And one is interest, as we've been talking about. The other is skill set.
Yes.
Do people want it, but inherently don't have the acumen for it? That has happened where I've heard stories, people have fired their they have fired their son or daughter, or it's complicated, but it can happen, and it can rift a family. It can be really tricky to navigate that. But I think if you put your hat on as a family and say, what is the best thing for the company?
Yeah.
It will lead you to the right answer.
Yeah. And that's coming to separating family and business, right? Which, again, not as easy to do, but taking those perspectives and breaking them apart. Because I would imagine when they're stressed like that, the conversation around the Thanksgiving dinner table is going to be kind of weird.
It can be. It can be strained.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Awesome. So how about transitioning now? A common question, especially us as value builders, is how much is my business worth? I talked to my buddy, he sold it for X. So, mine's kind of similar to his. Mine's probably the same. So like in my world as the financial planner, I need to know a valuation to kind of figure out, all right, if you sold this, here's your net proceeds after taxes and fees to figure out what they need to live on. I would love to hear your perspective as the M&A advisor who's going again through the transaction of selling, because you're in the trenches doing this. What comes to mind as far as any mistakes or misconceptions around business value?
There can be a lot. Just the number one thing you said, Tom, which is, oh, I talked to a buddy on my golf course and they sold their company for this. But if we're hearing that story and we think, oh, generally speaking, that means my company could get the same, that's a pretty big leap to make that assumption. The other part of that is you need to know the math. Most often, it's a multiple of your net profit or your EBITDA, or if it's a company where we're estimating a net income and we're doing adjustments for owner expenses, we'll get to a number that we generally call seller discretionary earnings, which is an acronym of SDE. So if you're talking to someone and they say, oh, well, I got a 4x multiple. I want you all as a listener to go, multiple of what?
Yeah.
Because immediately you're putting them on notice that you know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Multiple of what means there's two sides to a factor of multiplication, right? So it's this times this. And is it a multiple of EBITDA? Is it a multiple of SDE? Is it a multiple of revenue? Most cases, it's going to be a multiple of EBITDA, okay? But also SDE is out there and those numbers look differently. And so just acknowledging there's math and there's a formula. So there's an art and a science to this. The other part of it is, well, why would your multiple be higher or lower? If you are back to our house analogy, if you own a home on a street and all the houses are the same size and all the lots are the same size and they basically look the same from the outside, but then you go in and somebody has this Mac Daddy, jacuzzi and basement bar and decked out. Well, they're going to get a higher price in the market, aren't they? Same thing for your business. Just same thing when someone walks into your manufacturing facility and you are clean, you could eat a picnic off the floor versus the manufacturing facility that just looks awful and has had a lot of OSHA recordables. There's any number of differences between a business that a buyer is going to look for. As you and I, and you've probably talked about in your podcast in depth, there are 8 core drivers of value in any business. And then there are the nuances by industry that can give reason for your business to punch above its weight or be below with a discount. And for buyers to perceive risk, it's all about risk. The multiple essentially is a reflection of value, but it's also a reflection of risk. The buyers are taking on risk because they have they're borrowing, right? So they have a cost of capital, and they need to get a commensurate return. So in any deal, there's risk. And so for your business to punch above its weight versus your competition, and how do you think about valuation? It's going to be first and foremost the financials, as we said, right? There's going to be a discussion of the financials. They're going to come up with an industry normative number of what that multiplier should be, and they're going to move it up or down based on the nuances of your company. And that's the art and the science of valuation. When I do valuations, we're looking at comps of if your industry NICS code is, let's say, movie production. Okay, we're going to try to find comparables in the last 5 years that are around the size of your business. We got to find, comparables that make sense. We're also going to try to look for public company comps, but we have to discount those because we're not a public company; we're a small company.
Yep.
And we put that all together in a report for clients to get a range of value. And I think the work product is really important because it helps us baseline the value of the business today. And then as you said earlier, we can set some goals around your financial future. I love partnering with financial planners on this, by the way, because you and I are singing from the same song sheet. Of what goals are we setting for you, the lifestyle you want to live. Let's work backwards. If we discover that we need to double the enterprise value of your business, and we have 10 years to do it, okay, go. How are we going to get there? Exactly. So I like working with this holistic picture of the personal, the business, and the financial. Let's set some goals around those things and make it happen.
Yeah, 100%. And you brought up the multiple. I get this often. So kind of take a step back. The very baseline formula for valuation is what? EBITDA, or cash flow for folks, times your multiple equals your value, to keep it very simple. I get questions on the multiple, like what drives the multiple? How can I increase the multiple? Because there's that balance between the tangible and intangible factors, right? You have your financials, which are pretty concrete if they're accurate and reviewed. But then there's those factors of, what are your processes? You mentioned SOPs. What is your culture? Do your employees like showing up to work every day? And if I brought them in a separate conference room and asked, hey, do you like your job? What do they say? So like, can you talk about the intangibles versus the tangibles? And I know we're coming up on towards the end here, but I really want to drive home. You need good cash flow, but there's that other side of the coin that drives value, and that's the multiple. Can you touch on that a little bit more with the intangibles and tangibles there?
Yeah, I think it's important for business owners to know what are their real assets and how transferable are those assets. And
Yes.
they may be tangible or they may be intangible. So for digital businesses like e-commerce businesses or e-learning, what are their assets? They are inherently the customer database, or it could be subscription contracts or contracts that are in place that are multi-year. If you're staffing, you're a staffing firm and you get multi-year contracts,
Recurring
those
revenue.
things have a lot of value because they are enabling more predictable revenue. So a business that has more predictable revenue, a recurring revenue model, is typically going to see a higher multiple. There could be hybrids where pieces of your business are recurring revenue, and we try to maybe get a hybrid multiple on that, that kind of a thing. Or if you're a SaaS business and you're 100% recurring revenue, or if you're Netflix, that's why you'll start to see more multiples of revenue, and that's ideal. Most owners would love to have a multiple of revenue, but it's very difficult to achieve if you don't have a recurring revenue business. And that said, I think there are other things for intangibles like brand identity, also intellectual property. Intellectual property can be your patents, it can be trademarks, it could also be things that you, as your business, the know-how of how you deliver your product or service, that can be of value also.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Laurie, such great insight. I really appreciate you coming on today. Where can listeners connect with you? Where can they find your book?
TheBusinessTransitionHandbook.com is the place to go.
Awesome.
And if they go there, they can get access to some free goodies, and I encourage them to do that. And it's also available on Amazon if they want to pick it up there.
Awesome.
TheBusinessTransitionHandbook.com.
Very cool. So everyone listening, I will include all the links in the show notes for you. Go check out the book. I read it. It's a great read. And again, thank you, Laurie, for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Tom. It was great to be with you.
Take care.